Hi, everyone. Welcome to my channel, Life Lessons Learned. I'm going to talk about a date that took a sinister turn. So, for any of you that may have had dates where things got so far out of hand that cops may have needed to be called, and you think that may be too sensitive for you to watch this one, please feel free to exit at this point because I don't want to say I haven't given you a warning or at least given you an idea of what's going to be talked about. So at this particular time in my life, and also if you once you see this video, you'll know why in my previous videos I never had my dates pick me up again. Okay. I would meet them wherever it is that we're going to meet in public. I would get to know them for a few months by phone, by going out and that kind of thing. And I actually did this a few times with this guy. So sometimes tactics work and sometimes they don't. But at this particular time in my life, I had just turned 18. A few months had been 18. I was out on my own because if you watched any of my other videos, you know my mom had the 18 and out rule. Okay, so once you got 18, you had to leave the home, which was fine. It didn't bother me. I was prepared. So so during this time, I because I knew I would be leaving home, I right shortly after bought myself a brand new car. I was working full time and I was going to school at night, part time. And I'm saying school, but it was a university for trades. So I was taking up key punching and data entry. So I wanted to say that up front. Um, and at that time, because I, I worked downtown and my night school was downtown, I actually lived downtown at the YWCA. So, the Young Women's Christian Association, and they used to rent rooms, and they probably still do. I have no idea what the Y does in 2025, but back then they would rent rooms to people, and they also had the YMCA, which was across the street from us, for the men. But these rooms were exactly that. They were just a room with a bed, and that was pretty much it. Bed and windows, okay? And you did not have a restroom in your room. So the restroom would be down the hall. It was a community type restroom. If like if you're at camp or something, you know how those are. You have your bunks and then you have the restroom somewhere else. But anyway, that's the way that setup was. Now during my day jobs, there was this coffee shop that we meaning me and other colleagues and things like that would walk to sometimes during either our breaks or our lunch, to get lunch or snack or coffee. I wasn't a coffee drinker, but you know what I mean. And one day when I was there was a gentleman there, and said hello, and I said hello, and he said, asked me my name and asked me how my day was going, that kind of thing. So I was, pretty pleasant, nice looking guy, and dressed really well. I mean, we all dressed well because we worked in the downtown area. I said, okay, it's like if you don't work the downtown, you don't dress well, but you know what I mean. So we got to talking and everything, and no big deal. And then the next day, I, went to that same snack shop and he was there again. And it's no big deal. I'm like, I'm there again. So why wouldn't he be there again? Maybe he works nearby or whatever. But anyway, we had gotten to a point where we started exchanging pleasantries and he had asked me for my phone number. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So I did that. And then later on, probably about 2 weeks or so, he would call me and we would talk on the phone. He's again seemed really pleasant. I mean, no red flags or anything like that. Well, of course, he finally asked me out, and I hadn't dated in high school, and you know, I just hadn't. And so I was really, really anxious, nervous, not knowing what to expect or anything. But I was like, okay, you can't. You're 18. You can go on a date. Jeez. So, but because I was so nervous, okay, you guys, remember I'm a nerd too. So I'm not just nervous. I'm a nervous nerd and a square. So keep all of these things in mind because you'll see how this plays out. But I was so nervous that I told him out on our first date. Well, he had asked if he could take me to a fair, not have an affair, take me to a fair where they have, circus clowns and games and cotton candy. Okay. So I said, yeah, that would be fun. I said, but do you mind if my sister comes along? Because, I don't know what to do on a date. And my sister was 4 years younger than me, 4 or 5. So she was like 14, 13 or 14. And so these guys would say yeah to whatever. So he said, yeah, yeah, that's fine. So I went and picked my sister up. The date was going to be on the Saturday. So I went to my mom's house, picked my younger sister up, told her that I met this guy and da da da. Your younger sister wants to hang with you anyway and be like you and that kind of thing. So she was really excited. So he took both of us to the fair and we had a really fun time. And you know how guys are. They're playing all the games, trying to win you a stuffed animal, making sure they treat you right and your sister right and that kind of thing. So it was really nice. And we both enjoyed ourselves. Now, just to be fair, I told you I don't allow people to pick me up. So I asked him what time did he want me to meet him at the fair. And he seemed kind of, you know, bummed out about that. But I was like, well, I have my sister with me and I have to make sure she's taken care of. And I know how I drive, I don't know your driving skills. So he was okay with that. And he said, sure. So, we gave a time and when we got there, he was already there at the front gate and he had bought the tickets, everything was fine. So afterwards, I brought my sister back to the Y with me, and we talked about how much fun we had and how nice of a guy he was, and how it goes. And then I took her back home, and of course he had called me to say, "Hey, did you have fun? Your sister's really nice, whatever." But so that's what happened with him for the first few interactions that I had with him, and then finally he asked me out. Well, he had already asked me out, but without someone else being there with us. And I was like, "Okay, that's cool. I feel comfortable with that." So we set up a date and everything, and he said this time he wanted to pick me up. And I'm thinking, okay, that makes sense. I mean, he's taken me and my sister out. We've had a good time. We've been talking on the phone. Things should be okay. So he said he wanted to do dinner and then a movie, which is fine. I personally like to do the movie first, so then at dinner you can talk about the movie, but what the hell. So that's what we did. We'd gone out to dinner and then we went to go see a movie. And as you can imagine, both of those things take a few hours. Dinner is going to be, you got to wait to be seated, you got to wait to be served, you eat, you have dessert, whatever. And then when you go to the movie, they used to show 500 commercials and before you get start the movie, which is fine. I mean, I'm not complaining about that part of it at all. But then it was getting late and it was, after the movie, we should be headed home. Now at this time, we were in Detroit, Michigan. And Detroit, Michigan has this beautiful anyone that knows Detroit, Michigan or probably visited or whatever, would be familiar with Belle Isle. It's an island of that's in the downtown Detroit area. And it's beautiful, you guys. I mean, we used to go there as kids and go there as adults, and it's just a fun place to go and be. And cars are just cruising along, and motorcycles are, and everyone's picnicking. It's a big, nice park, okay? And so he said, "Hey, do you mind if we drive around Belle Isle for a while?" And I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, and it's lit up at night and stuff. So they have this fountain that turns different colors and all of that, like the one they have in Vegas. But this was long before then. But anyway, or maybe it wasn't. I don't. How old is Vegas? Who knows? So I said, yeah, that was fine. Now this should have been my first clue, but remember, I'm a nerd and I'm a square. I'm like, okay. So he said, I want to stop off at the store and get a couple of beers. And now you guys all know I don't drink. Let me rephrase that. I didn't start drinking until after I was 63, okay? Unless it was like Christmas or New Year's or something like that. But I'm not a drinker and I definitely don't drink beer, okay? I just never acquired a taste for it. But please don't go and say, she says she doesn't like beer drinkers. Said I don't drink beer. I never acquired a taste for it, okay? If you drink beer, I still like you, okay? But anyway, so I'm thinking, I mean, okay, this is what I'm thinking. He's getting a couple of beers. I don't drink, so they would be for him, and he's driving. So keep this in mind. I'm like, okay. So he gets the couple of beers, and he doesn't drink them while he's driving, but we get to Belle Isle. And, Belle Isle is a place where you just kind of cruise throughout the whole island. It's really a nice, clean, serene, peaceful place. At least it was before they started having the shootouts and the fights and throwing women over the bridge. But that's another story. So, so we were doing that, and then he finally found a place to park. And of course, it's a date. It's at night. You're drinking beer. You're in a car. He's not going to park where it's a bunch of people at. So we're like this secluded spot. And Belle Isle has this thick forestry too. So we had trees on one side and trees on the other side. And it's like, you don't want to be Little Red Riding Hood running into the big bad wolf, okay? So it was, and this area was not lit up. It's like, because they didn't have, lights throughout the whole place. It's a big park. So it's like pitch black. Okay. And I'm like, are they going to turn the interior light on or something? But, I didn't say that. So then, you know how they do, they put their arm around you like that. And I was like, okay. So then he, like leaned over to kiss me. And, like I said, I hadn't dated or anything. So I was like, how do, how's this going to work? Do I lean back as well or what? Do I lean forward? But anyway, so he kissed me, but it was like an uncomfortable kiss because I'm like, I'm not experiencing any of this stuff right now. So then now this is where it's going to get a bit sinister, okay? So then he said, you're really, you know, tense. You need to relax. And I was like, I'm relaxed. I'm just really ready to go home. Because I'm like, first of all, I'm not going to freaking make out in a car with someone that only took me on a well, I shouldn't say they only put me on one date because then it seems like, well, how many days do they have to take you on before you make out in the car? So let me make this clear. I am 65 years old and I've never made out in a car. Okay, that's just not my character. Now people are going to say, "No, she's calling me a name because I've made out in the car." You guys, this is all about me, okay, not you. So I just was very uncomfortable. So then he says, lift up your blouse. And I was like, I'm not lifting up my blouse. What the hell? And he was like, no, I'm just gonna say it because we're all adults here. I just want to fondle and kiss your breast. And I was like, you can't kiss my breast. You can't do that. So he said, what are you gonna do if I do? Now, that's a fair question. ah, okay. So I was like, I just don't want you to do that. And then he said, just let me do that. And if you still want to go home, then I'll take you home. So me, naive me, nerdy me, square me, I said, you will? And at this time, of course, I'm already close to tears, as you can imagine. He said, yeah, I promise. If you just let me fondle them out, I'll let you go. And I'm like, no, don't let me go. We're in the middle of Belle Isle Park. It's dark out here. You can take me home. But I digress. So of course, I still said, no, you can't kiss and fondle him. But he put his hand under my top and, of course, under my bra, and he started, massaging my breast, one of them. And so then I just burst out crying, you guys. I mean, boo-hooing, because I was like, oh, this is not going to happen. And then he looked at me and he said, oh my God, he said, you're a virgin, aren't you? And of course, I didn't say anything. So then he said, why didn't you tell me that? And I'm like, why would I tell someone that I just met that? I mean, what would be the reason? You're taking me on a date. Do we? Anyway, so he said, oh my God, you should have told me that. I never would have done this to you. He said, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. And he jumped back over in the driver's seat. Well, I mean, he was already over there, but he was like with me and half over there. And he said, I am so sorry. You have no idea. I'm not that kind of person. I'm like, "Well, okay." So said, I'm gonna take you home right now. Oh, I'm so sorry. So he did. He apologized throughout the whole way, but I'm like, I can't wait to get my ass out this car. So he pulled up at the Y, and before he This isn't funny, you guys, okay? Because we haven't gotten to the sinister part of this story, okay? You are probably thinking, does it get more sinister than this? It did. So before he can even put the car in park, I opened up that door and ran into the Y, okay? And I'm like, just almost stumbling. I'm crying, and I was like, I can't believe this guy did this. He took me and my sister out. He seemed to be nice. I've talked to him for a few weeks. He worked somewhere near where I work at. But anyway, that's what happened with that. Now, the next day, he's calling me, the whole time. And remember, this is before cell phone, so it's not like he can call and text and message me or do any of that. He had to call the landline phone at the Y. Okay. So the phone would be ringing, and I was like, not picking it up. You didn't have caller ID or any of that stuff back then. So it was like, I, I knew my mother wasn't calling me to ask me to move back home. So, okay. So I just wasn't answering. Now that date was on a Friday. So Saturday all day he's calling me, and all night and all evening. Sunday he's calling me all day, all night, all evening. I'm like, I am freaking not answering that phone. So Monday rolls around, and it's time for me to go to work and school. And I get up and get dressed and I'm getting ready to go to work. And something told me to just look out, look out the window. So I did. His car was parked outside. So now I'm like, okay, in order to get to my car, I've got to go outside. Hello. So I was like, fear just overtook me, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And because I worked downtown and went to school downtown and lived downtown, it wouldn't take me long to get to work. But so you know, it's not like I had a half hour to call and wait for cops to come or anything. I was like, no, I'm going to be late to work. So I know it's you guys. I happened to call a friend that worked where I worked at, and it was a female friend. And I told her, what had happened and everything. And I said, this guy, he's out here sitting, in front of my building now. She said, he's there right now. I said, yeah. She said, I'm gonna come get you. I said, yeah. Okay. So she said, you stay right there. And I was like, where else would I be going? So she came. It took her like 2.5 minutes. Well, okay, maybe 4 minutes, because I worked blocks from where I lived at, so it wasn't a major drive or anything like that. And she came in. First of all, she stopped and she made sure she looked at him square in his windshield. He doesn't know her, okay? Doesn't know who she is, or he's thinking she's just somebody going to the coming into the Y. So I she comes up to my place and everything, and she says, "So what do you want to do?" She said, "I can just take you to work, and that way he won't bother you." And I said, "Yeah, but now he knows where I live. See, that's another thing. I don't let people know where I live anymore. At least I get to know them." And then she said, "Wait." She said, "Wait for a minute. I need to go use the restroom." And I remember what I told you. The restrooms are not in the room that we're in. You have to go down the hall to use it. Me, not thinking anything, I said, "Oh, okay." So she goes out, to go to the restroom. So she says. The next thing I know, I'm looking out the window. She's down there at his car. She's taken out a pen and pad, and she walked around the back of his car and wrote his license plate down. Okay, now keep this in mind. We're okay. This is Detroit style. So then she went to the driver's side where he's sitting at in his car, and she knocks on this damn window. He rolls the window down, and all I see is her going like this. Then she points to the license plate that she's got, and then she points upstairs to where I'm at. I, I don't know what she said because I'm like, oh, no, it's on the fourth floor or something. But I don't know what he says either at this point. And then he drives off. He pulls off. So then she comes back upstairs. I was like, you have to go to the restroom, huh? And she said, well, I got his license plate number. I told him that you told me what happened. And I told him that if we see him again, we will call the police on him. And that's going to be the end of that. And I said, you are so crazy. You don't know anything about that man. You know he wasn't going to jump out that car and jump on you. And she was like, hey, I wasn't worried about that. So in that case, she did not have to take me to work because he was gone. So I got in my car. I went to work. Of course, I was late. All this shenanigans. And that was that. we still haven't gotten to the sinister part. So keep that in mind. So remember after work, I would go to school. DBI was the name of it. It was Detroit Business Institute. And again, it's not far from where I work. So I work in one place. DBI is maybe 3 blocks over, and then the Y is like 6 blocks from there. But again, I'm driving, so I don't care if the length of the distance. That's what cars are for. So I went to DBI, and then driving, I drove home, and unbeknownst to me, because I wasn't, thinking someone's following me. I mean, I thought everything would be over with. So I'm parking in the, parking lot of the building, and I get out, and he's there. And he's like, Sherry, I told you I was sorry. I am not like that. I swear to God, if you had told me that, I never would have done that. And I said, I get it. I'm not mad at you or anything. I just don't want to see you again. And he was like, what do you mean you don't want to see me again? I told you it was a mistake. And I'm thinking, but that's what you do. That's your MO. I ain't say that, but that's what I'm thinking. But then he got like really firm. And so he went to grab my arm, and he was like, told you, I just want to see you again. And remember, I told you that the YMCA was right across the street. There were some men there, and they were sitting on the stoop, and they saw this little tussle with us, with them grabbing my arm and me trying to, jerk away. And one of the guys, and they were older, like me and this guy, I was 18 at the time, and he was probably about 21 or 22. And these guys that were at the Y were fully grown men, so they were in their 30s and 40s. They said, "Hey, what's going on over there?" And he looked, and I looked, and then the one guy jumped off the stoop, and he said, "Don't make me come over there and beat your ass. Leave that woman alone. She's trying to get away from you." Oh, jeez. So then the guy that, I won't say his name, okay, but he let loose of my arm, and as two of the guys from the Y started to come over towards us, he hurried up and jumped in his car and took off. And so I thanked those two guys, and I told them, I didn't really know this guy, and he was upset with me. I wasn't going to tell him the whole story. I'm like, I don't know these guys either. So that was that. Now I can tell you, of course, he, caught me a few more, I want to say weeks or days or something, and I didn't pick up, didn't answer. I was like, because you can't give a dog a bone, they'll keep trying to wedge their way in. So that was the end of that. And then I didn't hear from him anymore after a couple of weeks. And that was the end of that. But as a result of that, that's when I had made up my mind that I would, as I'm meeting people, I would meet them in public places. And I don't mean just a public place, it's going to be a public place with people, okay? Because it doesn't do you any good to meet in public if no one's there. And I would really talk to them for weeks and sometimes a couple of months on the phone, because again, we didn't have internet and Google, and you couldn't just look up people's backgrounds and all of that. And I would go when I would meet with them, it would be in public, and I could see how they acted and communicated and that kind of thing. But that was that lesson that I learned from that particular experience. And so that's why when you see my previous videos, if you haven't watched the online dating series and the dates from hell, you'll see that that's the reason why I don't allow people to pick me up or know where I live. And if I can help it, they won't know where I work either. You definitely don't want problems at work with some knucklehead you just met. So hopefully some of these experiences that I've had would prevent other people from having those kind of experiences just by learning some lessons, because you can't make all of the mistakes in your lifetime. You need to learn from other people's mistakes. And remember my mantra, knowledge is in the knowing, but wisdom is in the doing. And the learning of a lesson is the application of it. So if that had happened to me, and then 4 months later I'm in the car with somebody again that I don't know, and something happens, and then 8 months later it's the same thing, then you haven't learned a darn thing, okay? But for me, when I learn lessons, they're mostly learned for a lifetime, okay? I don't revert back or say, oh, I forgot about this or I didn't remember that. Trust me, when I've learned a lesson, it's been learned and seared in my brain. So this is Sherry. Please like, share, and leave your comments about what you would have done in that situation if you were the male and made that kind of an error and apologize. Would you have just let that be, or would you insist on, I don't want to use the word stalking, but stalking someone? Or if you are the female in that situation, how would you have felt? Would you have said, oh, well, maybe this guy really was sincere and he didn't know and I hadn't told him and that kind of thing? So leave your comments. This is Sherry. I will see you guys on the next one. Thank you.